Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 105.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Maine Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Maine Guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, coming to you live, recording this, but you'll hear it as a recording, from the communications level of our semi-subterranean northern Maine lair and headquarters. Currently we've got a bunch of laborers outside digging our moat. The alligators are on their way here. Apparently they're on a truck. And we're going to be legit here pretty soon.
Oh, I thought you had a float plane like when they stock those trout. We're just going to get a bunch of alligators.
Imagine alligators flying. What was that movie, the documentary I saw? Sharknado. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, there's all these sharks flying around in the sky. It was pretty scary. Like, I'm never going to, I can't remember where they filmed it, but I'm never going there. Weird meteorological things.
I was going to tell you on my drive up from Augusta. Yesterday I saw a semi-truck in the ditch.
Nice. Full of alligators?
Whole cargo of alligators running wild.
Oh, no.
They might have been the ones that were coming here.
I'm just saying.
I mean, a lot of people get alligators shipped up to northern Maine. It's probably a coincidence.
We would like to welcome, Christoper and I would like to welcome the director of the Jack Mountain Fly Fishing School, Paul Sveum. Paul Sveum, Master Maine Guide.
Master Maine Guide.
And that is no small feat.
And I have size 12 feet.
No, yeah.
I mean, 11 and a half.
Those are not small feet either.
12 and a half some days. Depends on the boot.
But yeah, so the thing with everybody's like an expert these days, and I love the way that Maine does the guide license, because you can go get a guide license, but to become a Master Maine Guide, you have to have 10 years of documented experience, right? You can't just like jump in and be like, oh, I'm a Master Maine Guide after taking like a weekend guide prep class. You got to put in your hours and your years, and I love that. So it is quite an accomplishment, and congratulations, let me say, for the, I don't know, first time, second time?
It's the first time.
First time.
And I know this is for the podcast, but you know, I appreciate it either way.
Can you cue up that song by Foreigner, It Feels Like the First Time?
I'll try and find that real quick. Have I been relegated to the sound guy so suddenly?
No, thanks. It's a cool thing. You know, I remember I went into the IFW office to get my complimentary sticker and patch, and one of the old timers walking behind the counter saw I was getting my master license, and he looked at me and said, "Congratulations!" You know, I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, you're definitely not a rookie anymore when you have the master tab on your.
It literally says it on the badge that you're not a rookie anymore.
Huh?
Essentially, you're saying I'm old, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I'm just saying, like, a little bit of that coloring in the beard might not be a bad thing.
The gray?
Yeah, cover that up. You got to keep up appearances.
I try to cover all this up as much as I can.
I love the whole thing.
That's why this is audio.
Yeah, the whole thing with masks has been great for me and my self-esteem. Paul Sveum was years ago, 150 years ago.
Oh, come on. It was 124.
Came out and did a semester course with us a long time ago, early years of the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School. Came back as an instructor for a number of years. And, now is what's your title, director?
I'm a youth program and camp director for the Kennebec Valley YMCA down in Augusta.
Nice. So director.
I'm a director.
So you have one of those director's chairs and like the megaphone, like all the directors you see in the golden era of Hollywood?
I do. Yeah, the big megaphone with a swirly chair.
Yeah.
And a beret.
Right.
Ascot.
You
got to have the ascot to go with it.
Is that what the beret is called in director circles?
No, an ascot is a thing that goes as a neckerchief.
It's a neckerchief.
And what's the cookie butter? Biscoff. They're two different things?
I mean, I've seen you slather Biscoff on your neck, so maybe not.
It's Sunday morning.
I'm glad you said it, Chris. I wasn't sure if I was ready to say that yet.
We're a little punchy, me especially, having just still on our first thermos of coffee. Yeah. So it's an 8-cylinder engine, and we're only one of them's firing right now.
Barely.
That's welcome to Tim's brain. So we're going to talk today about fishing, spring fishing, fly fishing in northern Maine. Tactics, tackle, techniques. Any other T words we could tack on there?
Tim?
Trout?
Tyrannosaurus?
Transformers, Tyrannosaurus?
Trans Am?
Thermonuclear physics?
Yeah, that's a T, but it's that's a different phonetic sound. Yeah. It doesn't work for me.
That's the silly word.
You ruined it. It's over.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to play with all the other kids.
Yeah. And good trivia about Paul. Paul does not know where the state of Rhode Island is.
I admit to that. Mostly that's just because I refuse to know everything about New England, even though I live here now. If I live for the rest of my life and I don't know where Rhode Island is at my dying day, I'm not going to be sad.
We should tell everybody where you're from, where Paul hails from.
Everything to me is a mitten. If you hold your left hand out, it's Wisconsin, and your right hand is Michigan. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and there's no mitten for Rhode Island, and so it doesn't process in my brain that it's a state.
Okay,
it's still part of England, as far as I'm concerned.
So if it doesn't look like a mitten, it's not a state.
I think Maine is a mitten. You could do that. My Maine mitten.
Okay.
What about Montana?
That's just a big square mitten.
Yeah.
You laugh, but look at it.
No, I get it.
It's a big square mitten.
When my children were little, one of them had a book called The Mitten, and somebody dropped a mitten, and then all these animals started living in it. Is that what it was like growing up in Wisconsin?
A bunch of animals.
Living in a mitten with a bunch of animals?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like right now. I kind of feel like we're in a big mitten, and it's cozy and warm and full of coffee.
But it smells terrible.
I said I was going to clean up after this podcast. You don't need to rub it in.
That's why we do audio. So we were out yesterday doing some scouting. We published a vlog, or I did late last night. I don't remember what number, 105 or something. But driving woods roads, looking at remote fisheries, because Paul, coming up, has a class, Learn to Fish, Not a Guided Trip, class May 27th to May 30th. And for everybody wanting to sign up right now, you can't because it's full. But maybe we'll do another one, maybe an advanced class in the fall. But yeah, we were just out looking at some new water, seeing, I was out diligently testing the temperature of the water because the brook trout that we have here in northern Maine are very temperature driven. And we had a temperature yesterday, I believe it was like 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and in the video, you'll see the fish that Paul caught. So, at least one of them was biting.
I like how it was fish singular.
Yeah.
But
well, there's not fishes. It would just be fish.
Fish eye.
Yeah.
Fishy. Yeah. No, it was one. It was a good day. So like Tim was saying, the water, right now is still pretty cold up here. Brook trout being kind of a northern continent fish, they like cold water compared to browns and rainbows. They're a little more heat tolerant. Brookies like that. 45 to 50, 55, 60 degree water. If it's any colder than 45, 50 degrees, they're not really actively feeding. And then once it gets above that, 65 degree temperature, they think life sucks and they start to kind of cash out. So I think, right now we're in that the early stages of spring fishing up here and up in the county. And the water yesterday was starting to warm up, but it was still a little bit on the cold side. So the fish were, they were chasing around little bait fish, but they weren't quite warm enough to start looking up and chasing bugs around. But it was about 70 degrees yesterday, so that water is going to start warming up pretty quick. And I imagine the next week or two, the fishery is really going to start turning on up here.
Yeah, it was the first kind of warm day, right? I mean, we've had most of the nights have still been below freezing, mid-May. But yeah, warming up, and we noticed just throughout the day yesterday in the morning, just about no bugs out. And then when the sun comes out, well, except for black flies. Yeah. But then remember in the afternoon, all the hatches.
Everything was happening.
Just starts, it happens quickly when it does. And there's no big lead in. One day the fishing's no good. The next day it's like 1 degree warmer, and bam, everything is just going nuts and hitting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was definitely, kind of midges all day, which is definitely an early season bug not to get too techy about it. There was some caddis, some stonefly, and definitely some mayflies flying around. So it was kind of the whole mixed bag of hatches, and give those fish a few more days to get their metabolism revved up, and I think the fishing is going to get pretty solid in the next week or so.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I'll be out on the Allagash by late next week, so control streamers on the lakes and fish flies on the river. So kind of excited, and streamers on the river too. So let's talk tackle. What in your estimation? I know there's sort of two big schools of thought with fly fishing. Either you have a sort of attractor pattern, or you're mimicking like an actual bug that lives there, right? Like so, because you tie a lot of flies, so when you're tying, that you either kind of try to make something that colors and flashy that'll attract fish, or you're trying to mimic an exact insect on the landscape. Which one do you lean towards? And I know the obvious answer is both, but
yeah, when you started that sentence, you said you have a tractor. And instantly in my head, I was just picturing like riding the tractor down to the river and scooping the fish out. And
with a mesh front loader?
It took a little while for my brain to catch on to this train of thought.
Again, going back to kids' books.
There's a train involved now? I thought we were talking about a tractor.
How do they get the tractor to you?
On the train.
On a train?
Right.
Oh.
My children had a book called That's Not My Tractor, and it was about a mouse he would jump on all these tractors. And, he's like, that's not my tractor, that's not my tractor. And I went tractor shopping last year. I went to the Kubota place in Presque Isle, and I was just curious how much they cost. And, like, how did that mouse afford one of these tractors?
Well, he was living in a commune in a mitten with a bunch of other animals, and they all chipped in.
They pooled their money.
Yeah.
I get it.
Why were there so many tractors just sitting around?
I don't know. I think he was... I really don't know. There's a lot of mystery in that book.
I have a lot of questions.
And if you're curious, we'll try to put a link in the show notes to the book That's Not My Tractor.
Click the link below.
I'm an Amazon affiliate.
This episode brought to you by That's Not My Tractor.
The children's book.
The children's
the year
book.
2000.
I tell you, I think you could probably pitch fly fishing as just if you just read that children's book enough times, like you'll start to get the magic of fishing. That's all you need to know right there.
That's like Mr. Miyagi teaching right there.
It is totally.
Help the mouse find his tractor and paint the fence and whatever.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. And that's a question that once you get into fishing, you're going to be thinking about every day on the water. Am I going to be fishing a pattern that's going to be imitating what those fish are looking for, or am I just going to be throwing something that has kind of stood the test of time, caught fish for the last 50 years, and maybe doesn't look exactly like what the fish are eating, but for whatever reason it just trips the trigger and that brain the size of a pencil eraser in that fish and tells that fish that's something he wants to eat. This time of year, before the fish really tune into a hatch, you can throw a lot of attractor patterns. Yesterday it was just kind of generic bait fish patterns. White is always a great color for brook trout. This time of year they're eating smelt and they're eating other little white bait fish that are swimming around. And so any kind of white attractor streamer is a really good choice this time of year. But that choice really comes down to the water you're fishing. Fish that don't see a lot of fishermen and that maybe live in a little bit faster water, they're typically not as picky. The faster water means the fish don't have time to really inspect all the food they're eating, so they're going to be really grabby. Fish don't have hands. There was that one down in Gary, Indiana, had like 3 hands. That was terrifying. But they grab with their mouth. They feel with their mouth. So, there's going to be fish, sitting in that fast water all day long, food floating by their face, and they're going to reach out and grab it. And if it seems right, they'll eat it. If they don't, they're going to spit it out. So that's where those attractor patterns, like the Royal Wolf or an Adams or an elk hair caddis for dries or, your hare's ear or all those nymphs that are just kind of your general attractors. That's a really good choice because those fish, they don't have time to be picky. And if they haven't seen a lot of flies in their life, people like to say fish get educated, which I don't think that's very accurate. But fish do get selective as far as what they decide to eat over the course of their summer. So spring fishing is nice because the fish are, they've been overwintering and they maybe have forgotten all the times they had a piece of steel impaled in their face last summer. And so this year they have forgotten all those things that they shouldn't eat, and maybe they're a little more willing to eat big bushy attractor dry flies and nymphs like that. So up here in the county, I don't think being spot on with your bug selection is as important as some other places.
Yeah, we don't get anywhere near the fishing pressure as some of the fancier, more well-known rivers down south, like the classic trout rivers, the Bat and Kill and the Farmington River in Connecticut. There's lots of fishermen there for a given amount of water, and we have lots of water for the number of fishermen we have.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
But I also have to bring up and get your opinion on the guy with the fly shop just south of Patton, who is well known for saying there's only one fly that you need up here, the maple syrup.
Maple syrup, so I fished all over, a lot out west, and I grew up in Wisconsin fishing, and fly fishing is beautifully regional. It's all these little niche cultures of fishermen and water and fish, and then the guys and gals that tie flies, and everywhere you go, there's those regional flies that it's that fly that they're going to tell you got to have, that is going to catch fish everywhere you go. And when I first came out to Maine, I was fishing on the ground. I found Grand Lake Stream, and I'd woke up in the morning. I was sitting on my tailgate of my truck drinking coffee, and a guy walked by, and he was really nice, and we were chatting, and he's like, "Oh, you have any golden retrievers?" And I'm like, "I've literally never heard of that fly in my life." So he gave me 3, and that was kind of my introduction to the golden retriever. It's a great Maine fly. It doesn't really represent anything, but it kind of covers all your bases, and it catches fish anywhere you go. And so the maple syrup kind of falls in that category. Alvin Terrio, his family came up with that fly pattern. It's a wonderful pattern. And I remember the first time I was talking to Alvin about that fly, and he was telling me it'll catch stripers, and it'll catch bluegill and salmon and trout, bass. It'll catch anything. And so I bought 20 of them. I've never fished any of them, but I bought 20 of them.
That's awesome.
Because anytime someone says you got to fish this fly, you should at least buy a few. And I don't fish them, not that they don't work. It's just like Tim said, I tie, and I don't have as much time to fish as I used to, and so I have more flies than I can handle. So I don't usually get to the more obscure patterns, but it's definitely a fly that should be in your box. The maple syrup, plus just the name.
Yeah,
man,
it's very New England-y.
It's so Maine-y.
But it brings up a good point that the same fly fished differently is going to appear different to the fish, right? Like if you just cast out like a dry fly and let it float on the surface, the same thing if you put nothing on it and it gets wet and you're dragging it under the water, then you're fishing it differently, and it's appearing differently to the fish. And that's Alvin's thing with the maple syrup, that you fish it along the bottom and it looks like a hellgrammite or something like that, or you could fish it like a wet fly, or you know what I mean, that you can, the presentation, my roundabout way of saying that the way that you present the fly to the fish is going to have a huge impact on what they think it is. Yeah,
no doubt. Presentation is, in my opinion, 3/4 of the game. I was guiding last weekend downstate, and the guy I was working with was just throwing a generic size 14 Adams to a red quill hatch, and I was watching fish kind of rising all around him, and he just wasn't really having any luck. A lot of his the casting needed to get sharpened up a little bit, and I took the same rod, same fly, and on my first cast caught a little brown trout, just because my presentation was different. And you see that over and over again. You're fishing, not catching anything, and your first instinct is to change flies. And typically that should probably be at least maybe the third step. First step should be changing the speed of the fly, changing the depth of the fly. Because if it's not looking right to the fish, they're not going to go for it. Even if it's the perfect pattern, you could be, fishing that maple syrup, but if it's getting drugged downstream at Mach 8, those fish aren't gonna give you a second look. So
Mach 7, that would be better.
7.5.
Yeah.
I mean,
8 it gets technical, right?
At 8, you start thermodynamics, and the laws of physics start getting broken down. And
right.
I told you my T word would come in handy.
I was trying to validate the.
I appreciate that.
I was, and so yeah, presentation's the name of the game. That's what you really got to focus on, and that's if I could transition to the class we're running in a couple weeks. It's a 2.5-day learn to fly fish class. Our goal is not to be, stacking the numbers or pulling trophy fish out, although, that's always a possibility when you're fishing. You never know when you're going to catch that fish of a lifetime or have that banner day where you're, up into that 15, 20 fish a day kind of day. But really the point of this class is to, it's kind of twofold. First fold is just to get the fundamentals of fishing down. I would say that spin casting is like playing basketball, and fly casting and fly fishing is like playing hockey, where anyone can run and anyone can throw a ball, and so you can instantly get into spin casting pretty easy. But if you're gonna play hockey, you gotta learn how to skate. Otherwise, you're never gonna play the game. And so, fly fishing, if you can't cast and you can't get that terminal tackle to out to that fish in a pretty representative way, then you're just not gonna have a whole lot of luck. And so this class is really focused on getting the basic mechanics of fly fishing down. And then the second part of the course, when you get into any activity, it gets pretty complex the longer you get into it. And fly fishing is no different. You go into a fly shop and you're going to get overwhelmed by selection and choices. And, you go online and you Google search fly fishing technique, and you're going to get 3.4 million videos coming up, and most of those pretty much suck. But and so this class is also designed to kind of cut to the core of what you need to know and what's not that important, just to try to simplify what's an activity that most people make pretty darn confusing.
Yeah, I have a saying that I read it somewhere, and I can't remember where anymore, but the modern idea of rifle hunters and tackle fishermen, that the worst place to go learn something about hunting is to go to the gun shop, because they can always sell you more stuff.
Right.
That probably the best place is to learn something about the animal that you're hunting. And for fishing, I think there's a great old book, and he might have been from Wisconsin. Have you ever read How to Fish from Top to the Bottom? It's like by a limnologist in like the 1950s, lake scientist.
I don't know if I have that one on my shelf.
It's a pretty good book. But anyway, he starts off with first you learn something about water and water ecology. And then you learn about the fish that you're going after. And then lastly, you learn about the tackle.
Right.
But, I've been up north with the Cree, and, we fish by setting a giant net under the ice, or, I've speared fish with a fish spear you make yourself. Yeah. And so once you understand what's driving the fish, once you understand their habits and habitat and where they're going to be, when and why, based on water temperature and spawning, then when you add in the tackle component, it's like completing the circle, right? It's like the circle of life. It's like the Lion King.
Does that make you Rafiki?
I'm not sure. I want to be the one of the ones that sings the bare necessities, though, in that.
I think, and that's possible. I think, and fishing aside, you put your mind to that. I think,
if you can dream it, you can do it.
You got a lot of life in you, Tim, and I think that's out there.
But again, on a serious note, going back to that most modern people are advised to start with the tackle, and without a base understanding of what's going on ecology-wise with that fish and its environment, then the tackle, there's no framework to put knowledge about tackle into, right?
Right.
Why would you choose this fly? Why would you... It's the water temperature's 53 degrees. Why would you choose a streamer over, say, a dry fly?
Well, it's sort of the same stuff with the maple syrup that we were talking about, where, whoever probably tied that fly the first time understood something about what they were trying to achieve by tying it, what they were trying to imitate, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then it just becomes a generalized thing, and, this is the only one you need, and you don't really have to understand why it's the only one you need.
Right.
It's just the only one you need. And then somebody buys 20 of them.
And then they never get used.
Yeah.
But no,
it's just, yeah.
And that's fine. I don't bemoan people. I drive a car, and I kind of understand how an internal combustion engine works, but I don't really need to care to learn how an alternator makes electricity, or piston compression. I don't have that capacity in my brain to really care about that. And that's fine. Obviously I drive a car and I get down the road without really knowing that process. But then again, if the car breaks down, I'm kind of asked, well, I can't fix that. And so, fly fishing's the same way. You can go into a fly shop and you can tell them, hey, I want to go fish, Rapid River this weekend. Sell me what I need to go fish and have fun. And they will. And you're going to go have a good time. And they'll put you on fish, and they'll give you the stick in your hand and the fly on the other end of your string to go have a pretty good day. And you'll have fun. But you're missing out. Fly fishing is just like anything in life. It's three-dimensional. And if you're looking at it in that 2D level, you're going to have fun. But, and so in this class, we're going to get out in the river. We're going to flip some rocks. And we're going to see what it's looking at, what's living in the water, and see what those bugs look like. So then when you go to your fly box, you can have the real thing in your hand and be like, well, what looks similar to this? And you don't need to know the Latin name of that bug. But maybe you say, oh, it's about the size of my pinky. It's olive, and it's pretty broad in the body and not streamlined, and you pick a little nymph out that looks about right, and then maybe you're at the second step, and then that third step is maybe you know the name of the bugs, and then you know just that much more. And the fourth step, you've gone totally over the edge, and you're sitting in the basement in Aroostook County drinking coffee, talking about fly fishing, and
step 5 is profit.
And then step 5 is infomercials.
Exactly.
Straight to infomercials.
Yeah, that's great. That's all good stuff. Yeah, so again, you can't sign up for that class because it's currently full. But maybe an advanced class coming in the fall?
Yeah, that's in the works. Springtime up here is a really good time of year to be targeting brook trout that are just really actively feeding. And so for beginners, this is a great time of year. The water levels are high and cold, so the brook trout are pretty happy. And like I said, they're hungry after a long Aroostook County winter up here. And so the spring class is just learning the basics, getting you out on the water and putting the right gear in your hand. And then fall, brook trout they're a fall spawning fish. And so in the fall, the males they get big and brawny, tall shoulders. They put on some weight and they get into their spawn mode. And that's when the big brook trout come out, get really aggressive. And that's the time of the year where you want to catch that, 2, 3, 4, or that kind of legendary Maine 5-pound brook trout. Fall is a great time of year for that. So we're working on a fall advanced fishing class where we focus more on the pursuit of the bigger fish.
Nice. Great. Yeah, that all sounds good. So one last thing, I just would like for you, if you can briefly comment on your time on television on the TV show Maine Cabin Masters Season 6.
I thought Maine Cabbage Masters.
Maine Cabbage Masters. It's like a big documentary about making sauerkraut.
Oh, I thought it was
Hancock County.
Cabbage Kids. Cabbage Patch Kids was where I was going with, but yours is better.
I thought that was just like the Dr. Dre slang for weed.
I don't know.
The Maine Cabbage Masters.
Could be.
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, I read though, not a licensed medical doctor. Who knew?
Everyone knew.
Well,
everyone
can
knew.
you really use that as like a professional title?
It's artistic. It's artistic.
I'm like, where did he go to medical school? Where did he do his residency? Turns out he didn't.
No.
And you wonder where your spleen went.
Well, I woke up and it was missing.
Yeah, that's because the other person told you they were a doctor and didn't have to back it up.
The gypsy?
Mm-hmm.
From the truck stop?
Dr. Spleeny?
Wasn't a doctor?
Dr. Spleeny?
Yeah, we've determined, I heard on the radio a while back that spleeny is an adjective word used in Maine and New Brunswick. And What does it mean? You just looked it up.
I just looked it up, but it was like 20 minutes ago, so I don't remember it.
Peevish.
Yeah, it was like peevish and like complainy, basically.
Yeah.
So any high school students listening to this, your next essay that you have to write, use the word spleeny instead of peevish. And that's S-P-L-E-E-N-Y.
I like that it's instead of peevish another word that they probably wouldn't, like that most people probably wouldn't use.
Or any Scrabble enthusiasts.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
There's your million.
But would that count in Scrabble though? If it's not like,
I don't know.
Is it a regional thing?
Yeah, if it's a regional thing, I don't know if it would count.
Really?
I like that we're getting into the nuts and bolts of this.
Although peevish would be a better Scrabble word.
Yeah, it would.
Spleeny is a pretty low number.
Spleeny just rolls off the tongue better, though.
It does.
Cabin Masters.
Tell
me about this.
Yeah, so, yep. They, the guys down in Augusta, the Maine Cabin Masters, built an arts and crafts cabin for the YMCA camp that I'm the director of in the summer, and it was a pretty awesome bit of generosity for those guys to come out and build that cabin for us. And finally, after about 15 years of trying to get on survival and bushcraft reality TV shows, that was my, take me back 10 years when I was in that junkyard in Jersey with that ridiculous bushcraft show I was trying out for. If you would have told me 10 years from now that the first time that this beautiful face was going to make it on TV was in that forum, I probably would have thought you were pretty crazy, but I generally think that both you guys are pretty crazy in general. So
yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah, so
not anywhere else.
Yeah, and I feel very comfortable right between you crazy fellas.
Yeah, there's a lot of love in the room.
Yeah.
Is it
all
love?
emanating from Tim's spleen?
It's very spleeny love.
Yeah.
It's not peevish love though.
No.
Sometimes.
It sounds like a Meatloaf song. Peevish love.
Yeah. It actually does.
That's 100%.
I'm going right to the Google after this to see if anybody's written that, and if not, I'm going to get out with my songwriting hat.
mean that one that you tried to give me this morning.
It's the same dirty old orange tube that is so stretched out it no longer has any elastic left, but yeah.
It's a metaphor for life.
Pretty much.
Keeps you warm.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I am that orange tube. Yeah. Well, I guess, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
for spending this time with us. A well-caffeinated Sunday morning. Look on the website for information on Paul and the upcoming fly fishing class, and we will post stuff about the advanced class when it's available.
Yeah, we'll be shooting a ton of video and photographs while Paul's up here teaching, so if you guys are curious about that, we'll have a bunch of information via that avenue.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is even if you don't come to the class, you can pick up some tricks and tips about tackle, tactics, and techniques for trout.
Wow.
That sounds pretty good, right?
That sounds great.
I sound totally legit when I say that.
You do sound totally legit.
I'm going to do it again.
Uh-huh.
So,
can you do it in like a high squeaky voice this time, though?
No.
Okay.
So again, even if you don't come to the class, you can pick up some tackle, tactics, and techniques for trout from Paul.
Totally tubular techniques?
Ooh, you're just always one-upping me.
I tried.
Yeah.
We got to stop.
On your game.
Is that it?
We got it.
Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.